Hey there! Something that is often talked about and requested is to have more locations, areas, and cultures represented in The Sims 4. Unfortunately, given the more modern aspects of building that The Sims 4 has given us, a lot of worlds, including the one based in Mexico, have some shocking similarities to many other worlds. So I wanted to talk about which area every world in The Sims 4 is based on. As the Sims team is based in the United States, it stands to reason that most of the worlds take inspiration from North America. The base game world of Willow Creek is actually based on New Orleans, which we can loosely see with the environment and specifically the riverboats. By extension, New Crest is also New Orleans. Sadly, we never got any iconic New Orleans things within this world, likely due to it being the first world in The Sims 4, and then just a free extension of a base game world. This is actually something that I would love to see expanded later on in the game's lifespan, specifically some fashion or build-by objects that add a bit more New Orleans flair into the game. Which leads us into Oasis Springs. This world is even more generic, but it takes inspiration from northern Nevada and Phoenix, being a desert area that also has a lot of foliage and grass to it. I imagine they intended to capture a little bit of Strangetown from The Sims 2, but didn't quite commit to the idea. Magnolia Promenade, which came with Get to Work, is once again just another extension of Willow Creek, this time trying to emulate a business district kind of vibe. Honestly, of the three variations of Willow Creek, this one is the closest to a New Orleans vibe. It's got some swamp-like areas for the parts of Louisiana leading into the city, as well as an iconic riverboat just out in the open. Next up, we have the destination world of Granite Falls and the Outdoor Retreat Pack. This world is based on the Pacific Northwest, and while it could technically have parts of Canada near Vancouver, it is mostly representative of Washington State. But either way, it's definitely in the Hoa Hoa country, although in my personal opinion, the lighting and spacing of the trees gives off a bit more of a Gravity Falls vibe. Granted, that show itself is based on Oregon, which is still in the Pacific Northwest's forest land area. To be fair though, with it being a destination world, it likely isn't on most people's radar. Personally though, I always use a mod that allows me to live in the destination worlds, so I feel like it's worth a mention. This brings us on to Brindleton Bay from the Cats and Dogs expansion pack. This world is based on the northeast coast of the United States, in the area that is known as New England. The general inspiration for the world is to have a fishing port or kind of wharf-like town with trees that you just know are to die for in the fall. But to narrow it down to a few specific states, with its environment and overall build objects placed throughout the world, Brindleton Bay is more closely tied to Maine and Rhode Island. Get Famous, of course, brought us Del Sol Valley, which I think we all understand is clearly meant to be Los Angeles, California, so I'm going to kind of gloss over that one. The Strangerville pack then brings us the aforementioned Strangerville world, which I feel like here on the devs took the Strangetown vibe they'd intended for Oasis Springs and really just went ham with it. I mean, its main inspiration is from the desert plains of North America anyways, specifically Utah, Nevada, and New Mexico, where they have open plains of desert with these gorgeous desert rocks, and of course, because of that vast inspiration, we also have a neighborhood in the world that has a more grass-like area than you might typically expect. While not in the continental United States, we also have Sulani from Island Living, which is largely based in Hawaii with some influence from Polynesian islands. Personally, I wish we'd gotten more tiki-like statues and items to go with the pack, as well as forever wishing we had gotten a waterfall-like object or a system to make our own waterfalls, to help emulate the glorious waterfall that came with the pack itself. But I digress. A cool thing about this world, however, is that it actually gave us a cultural trait with a Sulani mana trait. We then have yet another Pacific Northwest-like town. To be honest, this world is one of the harder ones to pinpoint, but the geography is very Pacific Northwest, both in the United States side and the Canadian side. That world being Glimmerbrook, which comes with the Realm of Magic pack. I feel like another reason it's harder to pinpoint is because a lot of the items that come with this pack are very Tolkien elf-like in their feel, which is obviously not something that you associate with any part of the Pacific Northwest to begin with. But while we are on the topic of the Pacific Northwest, we actually have two more worlds based on the region. those being Evergreen Harbor from Eco Living, which looks like a lot of towns and areas in Washington state specifically, such as Spokane, Washington, which honestly tracks with the pack's theme as a lot of people in that area are more environmentally conscious. The other town is Moonwood Mill from the Werewolves pack. Granted, it has a much darker take on the area's Hoa Hoa vibes, but it is kind of funny just how many wolves we've gotten in that specific area of North America. This then takes us to San Sequoia from Growing Together, which is very clearly based on San Francisco and the Bay Area, which honestly I was kind of surprised we didn't get a world based on that sooner, since the Sims team is very intimate with that region. I will say though, I do love how diverse the actual neighborhoods are in terms of the overall aesthetic between each one. On the other coast, in upper New York State, we have Copperdale, the world that came with high school years. It was specifically modeled to emulate popular teen dramas, and at the time of its creation, Riverdale was in full swing on the CW, as well as the chilling adventures of Sabrina on Netflix. The world looks very close to Riverdale from the show, which is based on the real-world location of Rockland County in New York State. And, funnily enough, in the Archie canon, Greendale and Riverdale are two separate towns separated by a river, much like the two sections of Copperdale. Also, Copperdale's naming scheme fits right in with the whole Riverdale-Greendale thing. Our final North American world, then, is Chestnut Ridge, from the Horse Ranch expansion. This world is based on several different states for the different areas, such as Arizona, Nevada, and Utah, but I feel like it's worth mentioning that there is, at least in my opinion, a bit of southwest Montana flair thrown in there, which, while most North American worlds do not come with specific cultures in mind, but rather a hodgepodge of cultures, since North America is largely a cultural melting pot, Chestnut Ridge is unique for specifically incorporating a bit of Native American culture into the pack, as well as, of course, the American cowboy stuff that they get with it. Moving on then to Western Europe, our first world here is Windenburg from Get Together. This world has a lot of German influence to it, but the name of the world itself is specifically parallel to the country of Luxembourg, which is a very small landlocked country between Germany, France, and Belgium. Which is why, in part, it gives us such a rural European vibe, to the point that most medieval save files or players will pick Windenburg as it fits that style. There is even a mod to make the world a bit more rustic and brown in its coding, to truly push that fantasy of a more medieval Europe. Next, we have Brightchester that came with The Sims 4 University. This town is based directly on Oxford, England, which makes sense given that the town is mainly known for the Oxford University. The world map even kind of emulates the city in a way, at least from what I see when I look at it, and another picture that has a cathedral-like building separating two other walled-off districts. And, of course, I'm sure everyone is well aware of Hinford-on-Bagley from Cottage Living, which is based on a rural area within the UK, specifically Cotswolds from England, which is currently my favorite world purely for its cottagecore vibes. Going onwards to the Mediterranean area, we only have one world, that being Tartosa from My Wedding Stories. It is undoubtedly a beautiful world, but it is unfortunately very generic. Most of the inspiration seems to be vaguely Italian, which left a lot of Simmers upset, but they did not just go with a full-on Italy world. The good news of that, however, is with it being more vague, you could also make it work with a potentially Greek theme in mind. If you wanted to play Sims who lived in or took a trip to Greece, granted it doesn't quite fit the Greek mold as much as it does an Italian one, but to be fair, it's not fully either of them. Continuing onwards for the map, with Eastern Europe, we have Forgotten Hollow from the Vampires pack. The small world is based on Gothic Transylvania, which makes sense given that it's all about vampires. Also in the same region, we have Ravenwood, the new world coming with Life and Death, which is based on Romania as a whole, instead of just the Transylvanian region. This world honestly is perfect for the Gothic and macabre theme of the pack. It also fits perfectly with anyone who wants to make, say, the Addams Family as a playthrough, as Morticia is often portrayed as a witch of Romanian descent. Going even further east, we have San Myshuno from City Living. This world is a hodgepodge of both Hong Kong and New York City. Personally though, how the city is layered, the overall vibe has more of a Chinese feel, and kind of looks like some Chinese cities, on top of the fact that most of our East Asian items for CAS and Build Buy in the game come from this pack to begin with. We also got a few other Asian items within this pack. Snowy Escape would then of course bring us Japan, which is another beautifully done pack in my opinion, and I can't help but return to go on the walks around it. I do wonder if the Cemetery update will get any new interactions come the Life and Death pack, considering we will be able to make our own cemeteries with that pack. Then we have Tamarang from the 4 Red pack, which takes us to Southeast Asia, with heavy inspiration from Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, which, having just watched Crazy Rich Asians before I even opened up the expansion, I was immediately in love with the world. I also now know where I have most of my Mercenaries live, if I'm being entirely honest, and that is in this city. The next big real-life areas that are covered in The Sims 4 so far to a degree are that of Central America and South America. Jungle Adventures brings us to an area heavily inspired by the Amazon rainforest, which covers a lot of the northern part of South America. Of course, this being a destination world, it inherently prevents people from living in it. However, as I've mentioned previously, I use a mod, which I will link in the description, that allows me to live in the destination worlds, and I often will have my Sims living in Salvadorada. Our final world is that of Ciudad Enamorada from the recent Love Struck expansion. This world is based on Mexico City, and while I do love the vibrant colors and areas of the city, I do wish we had also gotten some Aztec or Mayan-like build-buy objects or clothing, as they are integral to a lot of Mexican culture. In total, this brings us to 15 worlds based on North America, 4 of which are based in the Pacific Northwest, 3 Western European worlds, 2 Eastern European worlds, 1 Mediterranean world, 2 East Asian worlds, 1 Southeast Asian world, 1 Central American world, and 1 South American world. But what areas would you guys like to see come to The Sims 4 next?